Hi everybody, Bob Gilio here with another short video on my shop, and this particular one is on upgrading my vacuum system further. So I'm going to go over some of the basics that I experienced and researched and show you the system that I came up with. So on an earlier episode of this shop system, dust collection system, I showed you a manifold system I installed, and at the time I was just using a shop vac, and I used it a lot until basically it broke. And I even tried to repair it, forget it. It was a cheap Craftsman. Not a lot of money, $100, and it did the job in a limited way. I couldn't run too many machines off it. So it finally failed on me, and instead of going out and buying another shop vac for 100, 200 bucks, I bit the bullet and said I want to put in a more capable system, which most shops have. It's called the dust collection system. So let me show it to you. Here it is. It is a Jet system I installed, 1 horsepower, 650 CFMs of flow on it. So it's a high volume system, low pressure. So what that means is you have to put some big ducting in to get a good flow of the air. So, and you see here what I did. Basically, it's a nice system. This is a 2-micron canister, so it filters particles down to almost to 100% at 2 microns. And what's nice about this system is that it has a little crank up here, and I can turn the crank like this, and what that does is it really is a little paddle, rubber paddle that hits all the inside of the pleats of the canister paper filter material, and it basically drops all the fine material down here in addition to the coarse material, and this bag fills up over time. But it's an easy way to clean it, keep the airflow up without making a mess. So what I like about the system, it's very compact. You can see I squeezed it right in to where my old shop vac was. But on the downside, it doesn't have the pressure, the suction power that the old shop vac did. But it has a high flow capacity. So what I did was, and I'm sure a lot of you shop enthusiasts have looked at the fittings required for vacuum systems, and it is a mess. So what I ended up doing, instead of buying all of this flexible hose that you can buy for, $10 a foot or some crazy number like that, I went ahead and I used more common materials, and you can see here this is a lightweight PVC. It's called a sewer and drain. Here it is right here, sewer and drain pipe. You usually use it outdoors for draining downspouts in the yard. And what I liked about it was it's lightweight, it had a low cost point, and you don't really need more than this. So, and I liked it was rigid too. So it's just so much neater to install a rigid system than the flexible hoses, which sag all over the place. So I did do that. I came off with the 4-inch trunk off of the induction motor here, the impeller, and even the fittings are the lightweight fittings, which all fit together nicely. I didn't use glue or anything. I just used screws like you would on a ducting system. So you don't really need tight joints here because the volume of flow rate is so high. And I had to get a little creative here. I had to transition to the ABS I put in, with it, which is schedule 40, from these lightweight sewer and drain pipe fittings. So what I did was I came up with this solution where I use this collar reducer to go from the outside of the hub, which is very unusual, to the inside, correct inside diameter for the schedule 40, either PVC or in this case ABS. And basically I teed it off. I avoided my receptacle there, and I went over here with it, under here, and it comes to my chop saw here, and then I go behind my cabinet here, and I installed a hose system here with, as you can see, another blast gate. So I can have the vacuum come all over here, and I can use this for usually my sanding stations here. So I hook this up to my sander and all of my power tools here that have the dust ports on them. So it makes it for a really neat system and minimize the dust. So in that regard, it's very good. And I also have attachments here to just basically vacuum the floor if I wanted to. I have used it a lot for that. And then over here, you'll see the trunk line here. I did a 4-inch drop to the table saw. I put a 4-inch blasket in here like that. So I give my table saw the highest volume of flow because it generates the most dust. And as you can see, I went ahead and teed it in there with a nice 22 and did a nice elbow into the bottom of my table saw, which I made a custom, as you saw in an earlier video, I made a custom back to seal the motor from seal the section of the cabinet where the motor hangs out so dust doesn't come out that way. And I also I put a panel on the bottom. You really can't see it, maybe a little bit, but then I cut a drain port into it. So and I put a leg on this, which is nice. It basically sits on the floor, so it supports itself. You see a little adjusting leg on the bottom. So just to keep it anchored and secured. And then this trunk comes over here, and I had to use another clever solution here. As you see here, I use these donuts inside to go from the 4-inch sewer and drain down to the scheduled 42-inch PVC, and you know, it's all dry fit together, and I hold it together with screws just to prevent things from coming undone. But you see here, I have a drop to my top of my saw. If I'm doing a lot of panel cutting, I'll get a mist of dust here, so this will suck up some of that. I have another drop here with a 2-inch, 2.5-inch blast gate, and then it goes along here and right to my sander, hooked up with a blast gate there, right here, and then it goes to my table saw. Sorry, my drill press, and you see it hooks right into my fence there. I have this nice, there's another video I did on this Rockler table, drill press table, which I really like. So, and I have the vacuum hooked up to that, dust control. So for my miter saw, I want to talk a little bit about my experience with controlling dust from this. This is a tough thing to control dust from because it generates a lot of dust, and it kind of sprays it out the back. Even though there's a port, I increased the size of the hose from 1.25 to 2.5, and it still wasn't enough to grab 90% of the dust. So what I did was I actually used this seal, this brush seal, which I bought online. Here's a piece of it here. You can see here. It's a nice dust seal. They use it a lot of times for industrial shops that have doors, large doors, open and close. And it comes with a nice J channel or F channel here that the dust seal slides into. So I used it. What I did was I used to have this. This is my first attempt, you see. And this was a piece of vinyl that I basically wrapped around the saw like this, and I used some siding, aluminum siding track here to give it a stiffness at the edge. But as you can see, it got all torn up, especially when you're cutting angles at off for 90, so 45 tilt or 45 angles. You can see that this seal got in the way, even though I was cutting it, trying to cut it so that it would avoid all of the obstructions. I found that it wasn't enough. So I'm trying this new seal here. I installed this seal. I basically drilled and tapped some screws here on the lower frame of my saw. And basically what I like about this is I went ahead and I went all the way around, as you can see, and it moves out of the way. It's more flexible. It's not perfect. So you can see his example. So if you're cutting a piece of stock, then you can see it kind of brushes by the wood, and that contains the dust better. So I trim it because you can see it kind of gets in the way of the blade. The blade trims it too as well. But I find that if you trim it back enough, you get a much easier cut, because it moves easier and it holds more of the dust inside that gets sucked up into the vacuum system. So going back to the dust collector itself, just my initial review. I've had it now for about a month and a half, about 6 weeks. It has gotten some good use. I've got good use out of it. This bag is filled up halfway already. I already emptied it. My initial review is I was a little disappointed in the suction. It doesn't have a lot of head to it. In other words, the head, it basically goes to zero very easily. I'll give you an example. So I'm going to start it up. And I'm going to open this port here. So it has a good flow. But what I find that if I put my hand over it, the head goes to zero. It's not sucking my hand very hard. So, and I could close the system off like that. And if that was with my vacuum, the thing would just, you know, roar like it was being, you know, tortured. Where this system is much quieter, but the head goes to zero very quickly. So where that matters is if you run a long length of this piping like I do here behind the bench, and where I see it the most is when I use this hose here to use it with the attachment to vacuum the floor. The head is very low. You know, it won't pick up anything of substantial weight like filings or screws, or even though it's a good thing, I don't want to pick up screws. It doesn't have the kind of suction that a shop vac would. But other than that, I love it because it's quiet and it has a huge capacity, and my shop has never been cleaner with it. So I hope you found that helpful. This is my latest upgrade, and I know a lot of us have gone through all the different size issues, going from vacuum fittings, which are tapered. They're all tapered fittings like this, versus plumbing fittings. And then the hose fittings for the vacuums are a different size as well. So it becomes a real challenge. Like these knife gates here, blast gates here, they're a tapered fit. So in this case, you can see I used a donut, and you can't really see it. I used a donut here inside the hub to reduce it down, and I pushed in the blast gate into that. And then I used a Fernco fitting to hook up my hoses. And I did. So my goal for the plumbing was to minimize all the different size fittings, and as well as these types of Fernco fittings, these flexible ones, because they're expensive and they add a lot of, you know, parts to the system, which I don't like. So you can see if I went with the 4-inch here, it's a pretty simple design here. And I minimize all these kind of conversion fittings. Only place I use them is, like you said, is when I use a blast gate or when I go to a hose connection. So everything else, like this is a good example. I just cut this plastic gate right into the 4-inch trunk, and it fit really nicely. So anyways, I hope you find this useful, and my experience hopefully helps you make your decisions on what you're going to do with your system. All right. Thanks for watching.